What's up, fellow bike nerds, and welcome back to the Rewind presented by 99 Spokes, where we catch you up on the month's biggest cycling industry news stories. We saw a ton of cool new bikes come out in October, from the rebirth of one of the most iconic freeride bikes of all time, to this tiny little balance bike that can supposedly work for kids as young as 9 months old. But by far the most polarizing, and depending on who you ask, the most interesting bike to come out this month is the all-new Also TMB. Now, I'll be honest, when I first saw the TMB, which is being produced under the same brand family as Rivian, I quickly wrote it off as just another auto manufacturer trying to wring a few extra bucks from its diehard fans. That is until I read a review from Velo, in which the author called it, quote, the most impressive bike he's ridden all year. That's some pretty high praise coming from an editor at one of the cycling industry's biggest media companies. So of course, I had to take a deeper look. What I found ended up being a bit of a mixed bag. Let's go ahead and start with the good. When Rivian's sister company also set out to make an e-bike, they decided to build it from the ground up rather than slapping a battery and motor on a conventional analog bike. That means you get a ton of neat and in some cases never before seen features. One of the biggest of these is definitely the Dream Ride eDrive system. This is a fully fly-by-wire design where your pedaling doesn't directly connect to the wheels at all. Instead, a sensor picks up your pedaling input and sends a corresponding force, up to 180 newton meters of it, to the rear wheel. Meanwhile, your pedaling essentially works as part of a generator, helping to recharge the battery as you ride. There's a lot of other really cool stuff that goes along with this, including auto shifting without a derailleur and regenerative braking that sadly I'm not going to cover in too much detail just for the sake of time. But one thing I do want to talk about is Rivian, or should I say Also's claim of this being 3 bikes in one. And the way that they do that is by using an interchangeable kind of seat post upper frame assembly. This allows you to switch the bike between 2 different lengths standard seat post masts, a cargo rack equipped option, or a moto-esque bench seat. Obviously, all of these greatly improve the bike's versatility and therefore value. But if you ask me, there's a lot of drawbacks, at least as of now, to the TMB. A lot of these come down to the fact that the bike is pretty much entirely built out of proprietary parts. This, of course, brings up the issue of maintenance. What happens when your little handlebar mounted blip stops functioning, or the proprietary inverted fork needs a service? Do you have to go to your nearest Rivian dealer? Well, if that's the case, here in Oregon, there's only one of them. I'm about 4 hours away from it. Another potential red flag of the TMB is the price. The base model lists for $4,000, making it one of the most expensive urban e-bikes on the market. Now, to be fair, the TMB does manage to reliably deliver the quote transcendent performance it promises. It could be well worth the sticker price. All in all, I think it's pretty cool that Also is exploring some new innovative technologies within the e-bike space. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of these things end up pushing the bike industry as a whole closer to whatever an ideal e-bike ends up being. That said, you won't be finding my name on the pre-order list. The uncertainty that comes with said innovations, combined with the fact that there's essentially zero maintenance model that they've released as of right now, is a bit too much for me to swallow. Now, unlike my initial response to the TMB, I was extremely excited when I heard about the relaunch of the Transition Bottlerocket. In case you're unfamiliar with the name, the first and second gen Bottlerocket were iconic short travel freeride bikes that graced us with their presence from 2009 to 2012. And while the new bike shares the same ethos and of course name, that's just about where the similarities stop. The third gen Bottlerocket is available as either a 180mm single crown bike or a 200mm dual crown option. Regardless of which one you go with though, you get an aluminum frame and some very freeride friendly 27.5-inch wheels front and rear. Seeing as freeride is such a broad category these days, it only makes sense that a bike targeted towards freeriders would have a lot of adjustment. The Bottlerocket definitely delivers here. You get 2 sets of flip chips, one in the chainstays that allow you to adjust them from 436 to 446 millimeters in 5mm increments. There's also a 4-way flip chip in the lower shock mount that adjusts suspension progression, bottom bracket height, and head tube angle. Speaking of the shock mount, the entire lower junction of the frame is actually cast into one single piece of aluminum. This, according to Transition, not only improves strength and lateral stiffness, but also eliminates any potential alignment issues between the bottom bracket, main pivot, and lower shock mount. Pricing is a bit steep if you ask me, with the frame set listing for $2,499 and the 180mm single crown complete for $4,699, and finally the 200mm dual crown bike for $5,199. Speaking of high prices though, our next bike is anything but. Meet the new Polygon Collosus T, an analog version of the TLE e-bike we reviewed earlier this month. The biggest story here is definitely the price, with the base model listing for just $2,999. For that, you get a full carbon frame, Marzocchi suspension, and a full Shimano Dior group set. Or, if you're feeling like spoiling yourself, you can get the T9, which features RockShox's ultimate level suspension and Shimano's new wireless XTR Di2 drivetrain for less than $5,000. But there's more going on here than just a bunch of fancy parts bolted to a catalog frame. The new Collosus T uses an updated version of Polygon's IFS suspension that delivers 140mm of travel at the rear wheel. This is the same design that we got to try out on the TLE. We're pretty impressed by its performance. The frame also gets in-frame storage, an adjustable headset cup that can alter the head-tube angle by plus or minus 0.75 degrees, and 2 pairs of geometry adjusting flip chips that alter chainstay length and bottom bracket height, as well as open up mullet compatibility. Collectively, this seems like a pretty compelling option for folks looking for a high-performance bike without breaking the bank. Hopefully, we'll be able to get one in for a review later on this year. Switching now to the world of drop bars, and up first we have the 3rd gen Ari Shafer, which sees upgrades basically all around. The new bike gets improved tire clearance, now all the way up to 700 by 58C or 29 by 2.25 inches. They've also added an integrated down tube storage compartment and even made it suspension fork compatible. What's equally impressive though, is that even with all these changes looking to make the bike more capable and easier to live with, it also gets lighter. The frame is 200 grams lighter than its predecessor, putting the frame set weight of a medium at just 1,419 grams. Ari's also gone ahead and kept the geometry numbers in check, sticking with a 69-degree head-tube angle, but also adding size-specific chainstays and bumped up stack height just a bit on the larger frame sizes. As for pricing, the Shafer 3.0 comes in a whopping 5 different models, all of which get that same carbon frame. The base model, Shafer Sport, lists for $2,549 and goes all the way up to the Shafer Team, which costs $8,499. There's also a frame set option available, which costs $1,999. On the complete opposite end of the spectrum, we have the all-new Wilier Volante, an aero race bike that, according to Wilier, is the fastest they've ever made. Everything on the bike was designed to pair maximal aerodynamic efficiency with comfort and control in real-world conditions. There's a new down tube specifically shaped to guide air over the aero bottles and cages. The rear triangle angles in to help reduce wake, and there's even a fin protruding over the front brake caliper to further smooth airflow. All in all, that gives the new Volante a 13.6% reduction in drag over its predecessor, and, according to Wilier, 2.4% more aerodynamic on average when compared to 5 other unnamed World Tour bikes. But even with all that focus on aerodynamics and outright speed, they've still managed to make the bottom bracket 7.5% stiffer and bump tire clearance up to 34mm. The bike is available in a wide range of group set and wheel options, starting at a hefty €9,900, with the top tier Dura-Ace Di2 build weighing in at a barely legal 15.6 pounds or 7.1 kilograms. Our 6th and final new bike highlight from October may not be the most high-tech, but it certainly is the cutest. The Woom Wow is a pint-sized balance bike designed for kids as young as 9 months old. The key feature on the bike, and what sets it apart from a lot of other bikes targeted to this same age range, are its self-balancing wheels. According to Woom, the gentle side-to-side wobble simulates the dynamics of real riding, helping develop coordination, balance, and confidence. In addition to the fancy wheels, the bike also features self-centering steering and a clever saddle/carrying handle combo, putting the weight of the Wow at just 6 pounds. On top of that, the bike is fully manufactured in Portugal out of 98% recycled material. I have a 1-year-old, and I really wish the Woom Wow would have came out about 6 months ago, because I think it would have done a good job of splitting the difference between bikes like the early rider Super Velo, which is still proving to be a bit too tippy for my daughter to use on her own, and the genetic 4-wheeled options that are a lot easier to use, but don't do much to mimic actual bike riding. If this sounds like something you or your little one would be interested in, then you can pick one up directly from Woom's website or from a growing number of their partner retailers for $199. Time now for our deal of the week. So this time around, it comes from this video's sponsor, Ari. A lot of people know that Ari has some of the best prices in the game, like the Shafer 3.0 I mentioned earlier for just $2,500, or the Cascade Peak we featured in our value trail bike head-to-head test last summer that starts at $2,200. But where Ari's value really comes through most, at least in my opinion, is with their commitment to making sure that their customer gets the perfect bike for them. They do this in a few ways, the first of which being their Ari custom setup, where you provide things like your height, inseam, and shoulder width, and Ari will help make sure you not only end up with the right frame size, but also swap out things like crank length, stem length, and dropper post length. On top of that, they offer a 30-day love it or return it guarantee, where you can buy a new bike, test it out on your local trails or roads, and if it doesn't perfectly suit your needs, send it back, no questions asked. All of that makes Ari a fantastic choice for riders looking to get that custom tailored experience without spending way too much on a new bike. And if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, I've left an affiliate link down in the description where you can learn more about their various mountain, gravel, and road bikes. Time now for some industry gossip. It seems only fitting to start off by reflecting a little bit on what's probably the most viewed mountain bike event of the year, and that's Red Bull Rampage. This year saw some of the highest highs and lowest lows that I can remember. On the women's side, Robin Gooms laid down a run that wouldn't have looked out of place in the men's field, with big tricks on exposed features high on the mountain, earning her second consecutive title. Chelsea Kimball bit off one of the most iconic Rampage features of the modern era, Brendan Fairclaw's Battleship, but sadly had a fall in practice preventing her from riding finals. On the men's side of things, we saw a healthy dose of new blood not only on the start list, but also on the podium. Hayden Zablotny took home the top spot in his inaugural appearance, combining insane tech at the top of his run with some proper tricks on massive features lower down. But we also saw two heavy falls, one from Emil Johansson and the other from Adolf Silva. Silva's crash in particular resulted in a spinal cord injury, and at the time of recording, he has no sensation from the chest down. Silva is one of the strongest dudes in the game, and is somehow managing to get through this with a smile and a sense of humor. But there's of course still a massive financial burden attached to this as well. I've left a link to donate to his Road to Recovery fund in the description. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I'm a huge Rampage fan. I have been since I was a kid, and still, every year I look forward to the event. This time around, after watching the women's event, I was stoked. My wife and I went for a ride immediately after, and we're both feeling motivated to send it on our comparably tiny features in the woods. But I had a very different feeling after watching the men's event. Seeing two of the best freeriders in the world airlifted off the side of the mountain was heavy, and has me wondering how we can still progress this side of freeride without the need for exposed tail whip drops or step down double flips. I personally don't have the answer to this. I don't know if anyone does just yet, but I still think it might be an important question to be asking. Our next story might not have the same life or death implications as that first one, but it's still something that many people feel just as strongly about. And that's that the team formerly known as Israel Premier Tech has announced that they will be rebranding for next season. This comes after massive protests at the Vuelta earlier this summer, and Factor, the team's bike sponsor, threatening to pull out if the name wasn't changed. There's no word yet on what the new team name will be, or if they'll still be racing under the Israeli flag, but one thing they have confirmed is that the team's owner and vocal Israel proponent, Sylvan Adams, will take a step back from the more hands-on management approach he's been taking up to now. But of course, this begs the question of whether or not this is going to be too little too late and the damage has already been done. It'll be interesting to see how riders, fans, and sponsors take to this new change. Up next, we have a pair of legal battles that we first introduced last month that now have been more or less resolved, if not at least temporarily. The first of these is Strava's filing against Garmin, in which they claimed that Garmin was illegally infringing on Strava's heat map and segment analysis patents, and demanded Garmin to stop selling several of their products. This surprised a lot of people, not only because the case didn't really seem to hold much water, but also because Garmin is one of Strava's biggest third-party sources of customer revenue. But just 3 weeks later, Strava quietly dismissed their court filing with no word on what, if any, settlement was made. Bike Radar reportedly reached out to Strava for a comment, to which they received, quote, "We're glad to put this behind us, but can't comment further at this time." Legal action number 2 is between SRAM and the UCI. Last month, SRAM filed a complaint with the Belgian Competition Authority, claiming that the UCI's recently introduced maximum gearing standard unfairly limited competition and disproportionately impacted SRAM's 13-speed group sets. Well, the Belgian Competition Authority has officially filed a ruling in SRAM's favor, saying that the UCI's regulation, quote, "restricts competition and constitutes an abuse of dominant position." They also emphasized that the rule is implemented without proper justification and lacked transparency in its application. In response to this ruling, the UCI has promised to appeal, so there's a good chance this won't be the last time we're talking about it. But in the meantime, riders are free to run whatever they'd like, and SRAM is calling this a win not just for them, but for cycling innovation and rider choice across the board. We'll keep an eye out for how the appeal shakes out, and of course, let you know all about it right here on the Rewind. So you might as well subscribe. Not gonna lie, that was a pretty heavy news segment, especially for a hobby that supposedly we all just do for fun. So I think we should probably end this episode up by looking at something that's got to be the antithesis of the cycling industry taking itself too seriously. And that's this dude who just wheelied his bike 93 miles or 150 kilometers straight, almost doubling the previous world record. This took Oscar Dalot 6 hours to do around an indoor trek, the latter of which supposedly being a requirement to be officially validated by Guinness World Records. And if that's not impressive enough, Oscar also holds the record for the longest one-handed wheelie and the longest wheelie without a front wheel attached to his bike. So, in a world of frivolous lawsuits and gnarly injuries, be the dude who wheelies his bike around a track. Thanks for tuning in, and if you like this video, go ahead and let us know by hitting that like button. Until next time, remember that bikes are for everyone. Have fun out there.